if you don't do something uncomfortable, if you come up to a discomfort and stop and turn around, your brain begins to interpret that as danger. So it was discomfort, but then it gets turned into danger. So now you actually go farther away. The next time, instead of getting 5 inches from that scary object, you get 5 feet from it. And the next time your brain goes, well, last time we were there, it was really dangerous. Now we're 15 feet away from it. So you have a double negative if you don't confront that discomfort. Not only are you not doing it, but you're moving farther away. Take some of these smaller steps that push your comfort zone toward entrepreneurship, that begin to accumulate momentum forward. And then there'll be some tipping point where you'll say, okay, now I have a product, now I have a service, but I've got some momentum. I've realized that I can break through this discomfort. It's not dangerous. I'm not going to die. I'm going to be okay. I can tolerate that feeling.
I'm Brandon Reed, and you're listening to Ready, Set, Startup, a podcast that brings you industry-tested perspectives from leaders working in all areas of the startup lifecycle, so you can learn from the wisdom that they've gained over years in their fields of expertise and apply it in your own entrepreneurial journeys. Let's get into it. On today's show, I'm talking with Doug Polster, COO of Thriving Center of Psychology. Competent, confident, evidence-based. That's how Doug describes the therapists he looks to hire. He and his co-founder have a unique challenge in their business: how to make therapy accessible while also ensuring it's highly effective. Online therapy services have a ton of momentum right now. No matter where you go online, chances are you've seen or heard a very well-funded ad for at least a few of them. But Doug and his partner's approach has been different. They're setting out to provide the boutique care of a mom-and-pop practice with the ease of use and accessibility that a larger organization effectively leveraging technology can offer. I loved his candid, authentic responses to my questions. Shouldn't have surprised me with his background as a therapist, but much of what he had to say came from a very human perspective rather than from a strictly business perspective. I love that approach because at the end of the day, the entrepreneurial journey is a human journey, and it comes with all the complexities and nuances that humans bring both to their lives and to their work. It was a refreshing discussion that I know you'll find extremely insightful. But Doug's sights weren't dead set on entrepreneurship from the start. In fact, from a young age, he was told that risk was to be avoided. That made an impression on him and was a contributing factor in how, instead of business school, he found himself pursuing a degree in psychology.
It's a great question because I actually come from a very risk-averse family background. My parents worked for big corporate America. They weren't risk takers, but I remember my dad always saying, corporate America is changing, the company doesn't take care of you anymore. Right. And saying, if you could be your own boss, be your own boss. So I guess in hindsight, that's probably what started me on this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
On this journey. But I like to think I don't know if accidentally fell into entrepreneurship is the right way of phrasing it, but I didn't take a path to business. I went to graduate school to be a psychologist. But weirdly, I didn't want to be a therapist or a neuropsychologist. It was just like, I can do that, but it seems like that's a path to something else as well. And that's kind of what ended up happening is education, the psychology education really broadens your mindset into human behavior. And it's so broadly applicable that it kind of scratched an itch of like, okay, there's a lot out here. And I always had 1,000 ideas and didn't act on any of them until I finally did.
Awesome. So you went and got educated, you got your psychology degree. And then what was the gap between that and actually starting your own company, and then lead us up to kind of what you're doing now?
I got a PhD in psychology and did neuropsychology at UCLA for my fellowship.
Okay.
And I was in the concussion clinic there. And my first step into entrepreneurship was once I got licensed, I started my own small private practice in California, in Los Angeles. And my co-fellow neurology buddy of mine, both of us didn't want to spend the rest of our life in clinic. And so the first project that still exists to this day, although probably not in the form I'd want it, was an app that didn't start as an app. It was a program that combined physical exercise and cognitive exercise. So doing push-ups and sit-ups while you have to remember a pattern.
Yeah,
That
interesting.
So we had this mom and pop version of it where we had rubber mats made with numbers and shapes on them, and we
Cool.
would do classes in the park for people that were interested. And then we ended up meeting with a guy who was like, "This is cool, but you need software." So he introduced us to another guy. We raised some money. We built an app.
Oh, cool.
Not really have a business plan, just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, right.
winging it early on. We made it into the App Store. We're sort of in a second push of that right now. My partner has taken that over.
Oh, okay.
Mm, But about a year into that, COVID hits.
Okay.
And at this point in time, I'm working on that. I have my private practice and I'm working at UCLA. And I see the writing on the wall with my private practice because my referrals are coming from physicians and no one was going to the doctor. And I received a fortuitous phone call from a grad school buddy of mine who also had a private practice, but his was in New York City. And he said he thought he had figured out the marketing for a private practice and he wanted to expand. And so we partnered up in 2020 during COVID, and I opened up California. He went from New York and also opened up Florida, and the two of us began a journey, which is now Thriving Center, which is also why the other company didn't take off because this one did.
Yeah, yeah,
and
that'll happen.
it
Yeah.
sort of fell into my lap, if you will. And the two of us have been working on growing that company ever since. Probably our first California providers were hired July 15th. So we're at 5 years
Cool.
in the expansion of my buddy's practice into what it is today.
Okay, awesome. And so, yeah, that one question I love to ask is about how you chose your start of founder, co-founder, why you did that. It sounds like you had a co-founder relationship that he came to you, and you guys kind of went forward from there.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Okay.
think we both remember this story slightly differently. I'll give you my
Yeah.
version.
Okay,
He
great.
wanted to
You have the
expand.
mic, so it's your version
Yeah,
that gets
he
told. Yeah.
wanted to expand to Florida, at that point in time because we had both done grad school in Florida, and a lot of New Yorkers were leaving for Florida during
Yeah.
COVID. And I remember saying, "Well, I don't know anybody in Florida, but I know somebody in California." And I had always fought to keep my private practice really niche and small, and he took the opposite direction and just sort of took anyone that came in. And I remember him saying, "Oh, so you're finally ready to do this, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, man, like let's do it." And I think the reason why I was ready at that time is the market conditions made it less risky. Again, coming from that risk averse background, we didn't need rent, didn't need an office. My wife was basically furloughed from work, so she was available to work for us. So she was our first office manager. So we got to dip our toes in while I kept my day job. I kept working on the app. I was still at UCLA, even though that had slowed down during COVID. I still had my private practice. So I was still doing all the things to make money and said, all right, let's give this a shot. And so we jumped in and hired two therapists after they used me as the guinea pig. So I was the one that went out on the marketing platforms to see if the strategy worked, and it did. And then we hired two other doctors and went from there.
So, help give me context to it is, are you currently still practicing? Or are you doing this full time? And then give me a little bit more context to what this is. If it's not practicing your discipline, what exactly is it?
So I have not taken a new therapy client
Okay.
or neuropsych evaluation in 3+ years, maybe longer
Okay.
now. I've got two clients that have stuck with me for a while. It sort of also helps me keep the wheels
Yeah,
greased
sure.
to do the therapy side of things for a little bit. But 99% of my day is the operation side of
Okay.
Thriving Center of Psychology. So my partner and I have a really good unintentional partnership where he and I have opposing traits that
Oh,
really both
nice.
help grow the business.
Nice.
And so we have fallen into that pattern. And so most of my day to day is operating the business.
Okay, cool. Awesome. But he's also a doctor in practicing or did practice. Okay, cool. Awesome. So as you've kind of gone all in on this, and you didn't, this was not your background, as you said, and you weren't necessarily around entrepreneurship growing up. Is this process of business ownership and being at the helm and buck stopping with you, is that all as you expected, or is it not? And what's differed from your expectation?
This is unexpected to my younger self,
Okay.
right? If I had gotten into this position at 22 or 23, I think I would have glorified it and thought it was
Yeah.
this amazing money falling from the trees
Yeah.
and be your
Yeah.
own boss and the buck stops at me,
Yeah.
Instagram reel oriented kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
you take control of the day and seize the day and go with it.
That's right.
Right. I think because I got started in my 30s, I like to think I was a little bit more worldly and I had had the app experience, which kind of shook me loose
Totally.
of any thoughts of grandeur of that this would be
Totally.
simple. And so I don't think at this point it's been surprising. I think it's surprising when I talk to other people who aren't entrepreneurs about what you do and about your day to day and the responsibility that comes with it. I think there's a responsibility, I think, that is a huge difference.
Yeah, just like, yeah, I mean, it's ownership, right? I mean, if there's just no one else responsible for if things go wrong, and that's a really tough spot to be in, and not part of the Instagram reel that you hear about.
Yes.
So give just a little. We're not going to go all the way into the nuts and bolts of your business, but for my audience, just give a little bit more context of what it is, who you guys serve, because kind of my next question is around how you went and started finding customers, clients, like how you got some traction. And so share a little bit about what the product is, what you guys do, and then how you went and got customers.
Very simple. We do outpatient psychotherapy.
Okay.
So if you have depression, anxiety, or even if you don't have anything
So it's a
diagnosable,
platform. It's a web app that people
it's
use. It's
it's not a web app. It's
okay.
it's it's essentially think of your mom and pop local clinic
Uh
where you
huh.
go to see the doctor,
Uh huh.
right? We are like that mom and pop, just bigger. So we're
Okay.
not BetterHelp. And I
Okay.
think, from
Right.
a marketing standpoint advantage, we have the feeling of a mom and pop, but
Okay.
the size of, a little bit bigger organization.
Okay.
So we have virtual therapy in 14 states, and I think it's 7 states. We also have brick and mortar locations to come in and see your therapist live.
So it's not the software, it's the practice that
Yes.
is the business. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Cool. And so what do you guys use proprietary software for that? I mean, to meet your clients, or do you just use other tools on the market?
That's the biggest question out there. So
Ah,
I
nice.
think one of the biggest growth challenges we've had is technology
Yeah, that makes
because
sense.
we started as a mom and pop.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
had maybe 10 therapists, 12 therapists. We used mom and pop software.
Okay.
So, and in healthcare, you've got HIPAA, so you have to use special,
Totally.
medical record software, email communications have to be secure. And
Yeah.
so we started off with mom and pop software. So
Yep.
to date, our electronic medical record only works in one state. So we have 14 accounts. Right. So part of the growth we've had experienced in the last year and a half is actually developing and building out a tech stack. So, some of it bought, some of it built, and then call it proprietary, but how we put it all together to make the system more efficient and work best for our clients who are coming in for care, but also our providers who work for us. They're also quasi customers because we're trying to deliver a product for them so they can make money. So we sort of almost have two different types of customer sets.
Totally. That was kind of my question, is like, who are you selling to? Who are you going to and saying, "Hey, we found a solution. We know you have a pain point. Here's our solution to it. Like, come on board to what we're doing." I guess, are you doing that to the doctors but then they're going and getting their patients? Or are you going and finding patients and matching them? How's that work?
So we find the patients and match them.
Okay. Got
And
it.
sort of our
But there's
model.
some kind of bank of doctors that you're matching them with.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
got it.
Yep. So Bank of Doctors worked for us. Sort of, they're our customers in the sense that we
Yeah.
have to convince them to come to us and not a
Yep.
competitor, right?
Yep.
And provide a better service for them. And then for our clients, our main goal is to make mental health care accessible and as pain-free as possible to get access to,
Mhm.
right? Still have to complete forms. You still
Mhm.
have to do things that the healthcare system requires.
Mhm.
But I think the most important thing to me as a practicing psychologist is I want you to get good
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
I don't want you, I don't want to knock on them, but the
Sure, sure.
VC-backed mental health companies in the world with
Totally.
asynchronous text messaging therapy, like,
Yeah.
that's a little tough.
Totally.
Listen, I want to push the future. I want to find the next version of mental health that's the most helpful, but I want people to get evidence-based care where they're actually going to have a chance at getting better than just treading water or at worst getting worse. So that's what we've tried to keep in our product lineup, if you will, to be attractive to the consumer.
I love that. And I love the way you're talking about that. I think that that's, yeah, such a fine line of like, of course, you want to leverage the technologies that we have to make care more accessible and more effective. But like, you can so easily cross over that line of pushing past that of like, these aren't proven, these aren't based or backed strategies and methods yet that we're using, and it's like psychotherapy is not the place to be for like the Wild West. You don't want to be testing out things. So this is, it sounds like a bit of the $1 million question, but how are you differentiating yourself from industry incumbents, from people they're doing it with those big VC marketing budgets? How are you differentiating yourself from them and your competitors?
Honestly, it's a difficult on the marketing side, because on the marketing side, everything looks the same, right? And so I think what we have done is provided good care, and then our reviews demonstrate that. Like our word of mouth referrals demonstrates that. We're not big enough yet to have like brand awareness, I don't think, right? Like you don't hear us on the radio and every other ad on TV and Instagram is blowing out the water. But I think, at least from the people I've spoken to, both clients and providers that have worked for some of these companies that you've heard of, they might have gotten off to a roaring start, but the negative reviews are building up. And so I think one of our biggest advantages is we're not them. And I think convincing people we're not as difficult, but is important. So we're therapist run and 2 docs running the organization, and we take care very seriously. And I think as we continue to build our brand, that's what really stands to the forefront.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I am, a little bit of my journey is I had done counseling for years and had therapy, and didn't for a bit, and knew for a couple different life circumstances I needed to walk through some things. So, and I have been hearing, I'm in the podcast space for part of my business, and I'm just hearing, BetterHelp, BetterHelp, BetterHelp. They even sponsored the show early on for a bit. I mean, I'm sure it's helpful for service for a lot of people, but for me, I went and I tried it, and I was like, oh, well, maybe this would be a great solution. Like I don't have like this, yeah, for a lot of reasons, and I don't even have anything necessarily of like, oh, it was terrible for this reason. It just wasn't good. Like I just didn't, it didn't do what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to walk through and it wasn't doing that. And after, and I gave it a legitimate shot. It wasn't 2 or 3 sessions, gave it 8 or 10 sessions or something. And then I went
That's
and found
impressive.
somebody else.
It's
Yeah.
impressive you gave it that much time. I
So,
think it's not to blame Better Health. We're probably getting on a different soapbox here, but I think therapy in general, it's hard to find a good therapist, and that's not a knock to therapists.
No,
It's just there's many
human beings don't, it's tough
there's
to,
many different modalities to therapy.
totally.
And I think, and I hire all of our therapists, so I do a lot of interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And to find somebody that's competent, confident, and evidence-based,
Yeah.
that you can mesh with, that's the last part. Right?
Totally.
The first part is hard, and the second part is
Right.
they could have all those things,
Yeah,
but you're not buying
totally.
what they're selling,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter. So
Yeah,
that fit
totally.
is really important. So we do like a matchmaking thing on our website where you fill out a form, and then an
That's
actual
cool.
human looks at your answers that knows our providers and says, okay, we think this person would be good for you, or that person would be good for you. So you talk about scalability, right? We could make the whole machine a robot. We could do that.
Yeah.
Right. And scale probably quicker and generate more revenue. But we wouldn't be providing good care.
Yeah.
On the back end, we could handhold people so much conciergely that we could help 7 people.
Right. Totally.
And that's it. So the sweet spot, which is the most challenging part, is how do we find that middle ground?
Yeah, absolutely. And do you lean into that in your marketing and your communication of like what we do is like it's a human being, like we are matching you in a very personal way. Do you guys talk about that?
Absolutely. One of the interesting things though is, and I've looked at some of your questions, like we hired our first marketing person in January this year.
Oh wow. Okay.
So we've existed for 4.5 years with basically the will of my partner willing us to the marketing side of things. And some fortuitous events along the way that helped us scale quickly that didn't involve marketing, involved more business development and relationships. And so marketing, I actually just set up my ring light to start recording some videos for some brand awareness. So marketing was actually something that we didn't have to do too much of early on. And just this year, we're now starting to scratch the surface on, okay, how do we create a brand around what we're doing to start letting people know what kind of great care they could get. So it's sort of like almost like backwards. Like so many people, right, when they're startups, I think they blow a ton of money early on for marketing to understand the market and the product market fit and all this stuff. Whereas we sort of We slow rolled it, and then we got a fortuitous contract and then jump, and which got us to a place where then we had to take the next jump, which involves more marketing.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Let's keep kind of drilling on this idea of your building, right? You've established the company, you guys have figured out kind of who you are, what your message is. And as you continue to build, can you identify, Doug, like what are some big bets that you had to take earlier on that you felt like you were really stepping out on a ledge? What gave you the confidence to do that? Did that risk pay off? What'd you learn?
So I think the first 2 years of the company was sort of a natural pace. There wasn't like a huge, crazy risk we took. We sort of rode the coattails of a company contract we had that helped us scale and grow. And then at the midway point, we had to make a decision because we had been not to get too legal mumbo jumbo, but in the psychology world, in the medical healthcare field, like company organization entity is difficult, right? By state, there's regulations. So we had all these different states and different ownerships and all this kind of stuff. So we centralized about 2 years ago, 2022, 3 years ago now. So that was a big, not a risk, but a huge step towards operating as one big company, whereas we were kind of operating in these silos. So that was a big step. And the next big step was we didn't used to take insurance. And so we had to take insurance. And that's a big
Oh, I can
investment.
imagine.
So
Hmm.
alongside that, which I think was the biggest risk, if you will, both financially and business wise, was
Yeah.
building our own electronic health record, or at least working with a company that allows us a lot of customization. And if you want to talk about failing forward, we built that for a year and a half, soft launched it, and then pulled the plug on the product after.
Oh,
That,
brutal.
in my
Brutal.
opinion, is the biggest decision we've ever made as an
Mm,
organization,
mhm.
the best one we've ever made as an organization.
Nice.
We
Nice.
would have sunk. And so
Uh-huh.
we're now in the process of version 2.0 doing
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
which we've learned a lot from. So that I would say is one of those moments you look back on and you hope it's like one day in that Instagram reel that's like they had a decision to make, pulled the right call, right? Uh,
Totally.
that's what I felt like at least when we were making it.
Yeah, and a lot of times you don't have the clarity or the data after the fact to know if that was even the right choice. So that's awesome that you do. Like, you're clear on like, I know that was the right call, even if it hurt, like that was the right choice, and then you're able to more clearly
Yeah.
take your next
It was
step,
a
and that's
choice made
great.
in 24 hours and yet
Nice.
never felt more confident.
Crazy, crazy. Let's talk a little bit about funding. How did you fund this initially? Were both founders just putting in your own capital, or did you go and get any professional money? How'd you do it?
So we both put in a little capital, but we've been profitable from day one because we're a service business and we only pay out what we get a percent of. And so we've been able to operate profitable in different varying levels of profitability, but we have not to date had to go through any outside funding. We've scratched around, we've sniffed around a little bit to see what that might look like, but we haven't done any outside funding at this point.
Man, the more I talk with founders, and get involved, yeah, in this world, the more I hear, from the outside looking in, it feels so much like getting funded is that's the prize, like that's the bragging rights, is like, and then they got funded, like they got money. And the more and more I hear it, hear from founders, the badge of honor seems to be like, no, they maintained 100% control of their company and haven't had to go raise money. Like, sometimes raising money is the only way, sometimes it's the best way, sometimes people are, ready for it, and that's how you scale. But a lot of times I think people rush into getting funding because they're like, that's what you do, right? That's what successful startups do. They start pitching and then they get funded and then they grow and scale so fast. But then I also I just hear from founders who are actually out there doing it. Keep control for as long as you can keep control, and only when you know exactly only when you know you need money and the kind of money you need, because not all money is created different or created the same. Then go get money. And I think that it's great to talk to founders who are at a place where it's like, well, we're profitable enough to be operating, and then when we're ready, if that comes, we'll take money. I think
Yep.
it's a really good position to be in.
I also think it's difference between products and services.
Yeah, yeah, very
Products
very
require
different businesses.
products more or less, right, require development or software, right? Unless you are the tech. That was our problem when we started the app, is neither one of us were coders or developers. And so we needed money to build something, right? And so if you need money to build the thing that you want to sell, more or less, you're probably gonna have to find money somewhere, right? But if it's a service that can be sold in incremental moments, right? Then you have an easier test product, if you will. Like, if you're a plumber, like, you might have a couple tools you have to buy, like, and a human to pay, but that's not that expensive. You can bootstrap that, and then if you get a client, you get paid, and you can pay the plumber, right? But if you have to build a new plumbing tool, right, you need money to build that to see if it works, and if depending on what product you're building, right, it could be a heck of a lot more expensive than you can bootstrap. So I think, and again, this is my opinion, service service level companies are probably easier to dip your toes into without funding to at least understand that there's something there. And I think that's pretty much what we did. We didn't expect us to be in 14 states 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this was like, hey, let's see if people like our therapy
Yeah.
and let's
Right.
see what
Right.
happens. And lo and behold, they did. And there we go.
Nice. Awesome. That's great. So, as this is an interesting question, I think specifically for you and what you guys are doing, because I like to ask founders about how, as they scale and they grow, they maintain the sense of the vision that they had for the culture of their company, and it's just different for you, right? You're not working alongside a product manager and a project manager and a developer, and and you're building a culture there with the team. So I'm interested to hear how you think about culture in your business and how you foster and maintain it as you guys grow.
That's a great question because number one, we were birthed virtually and are still virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this year, well, maybe the end of last year, when I realized I get why some of these big companies are saying, nah, come back to the office. This would be a heck of a lot easier, a lot of it, if we were all in the same office. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a heck of a lot of benefits to the virtual world as well, and I enjoy them. But there are aspects of culture that are way, way easier solved if you're in person. Absolutely. So that's been a challenge, not necessarily day one when there was 4 or 5 of us internally, we were in a group text chain and everyone just talked to each other all the time. So I think the hardest part about culture is our internal team has grown, not the therapist side. We're now about 20, 25 staff members in billing and marketing and operations, right? The difficulty has been how do we how do we keep the culture of community and strength and accountability and let the communication flow freely where everyone feels comfortable talking to each other, but also doesn't slow everybody down because everyone's just always talking to each other. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, did you check the
Totally.
training document? Right? Like,
Uh-huh.
you need to ask me that question now. Whereas 2 years ago, it was like, yeah, just like pick up the phone and call me, whatever.
Uh-huh.
Right. So I think trying to maintain that culture of everyone's here to support each other. We keep ourselves accountable. We continuously learn and we care has been challenging because of the virtual nature as the team has tripled in size. And then the last component of that is our therapists.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're all virtual. We see them once or twice a year in New York and only a subset of them. And trying to keep them engaged is very challenging because most of them are contractors. So I can't force them to come to
Mm-hmm.
work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so some people want to be more involved. Some people don't want to be more involved. So that has been an ongoing challenge that ebbs and flows through the years.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, that's a unique challenge for you guys specifically with the model of your business. So that's interesting to hear. Let's talk a bit about kind of operating the business as you guys have, found some traction, been running for a couple of years now. What is something, Doug, that you continue to go back to that you find is just a consistent maxim, a gospel truth of operating your company that proves itself out for you kind of over and over again?
Listen to your people.
Hmm.
I think there's been times in the company when myself and or my partner and or both of us have thought we knew best. And I think we probably did 5 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago when we were doing all the jobs. So I knew what the intakes looked like. I knew what the client experience looked like. I knew what billing looked like, right? But now I don't touch that day to day. And so trusting my team and listening to them and saying like, "Hey, we need this or this isn't working," and then trusting their solution to the problem, not what we think is right. Now we have to keep the vision in line. We have to make sure that this decision doesn't affect other things. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned that has come back to bite me at different times is not truly listening to your people and knowing, hey, this challenge is an issue and it might seem small, but it's actually big. And here's why. So trying to encourage my team to continue to speak up, but also us as leaders listening and acting on that and building the trust that we will respond appropriately to their challenges is really important. And it's something that we haven't always been good at.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really good. Now let's talk about scaling a little bit. I mean, from 2 to, you said, about 25 people involved in the operation around there. What's a word of, I'll say, caution that you can offer to other founders who are in that phase of growth and scaling their company? Things that you might have learned the hard way that you could pass along some advice on.
Oh yeah, I got a lot on that one.
Let's do it.
So I think if you're thinking of hiring, and I think we've learned this last year and a half, there's a benefit to the early employees that have been with us for a long time that may not have been experts in what they started out doing, but know the company in and out, are trustworthy, are for the company, and are willing to work hard. If they're not experts in a certain area, that's okay, right? Because they're fully bought in and trustworthy, and they're learning those areas. So I think those types, that group is awesome. I think the challenge you have is if you're looking to hire a position, I think what you need to have is you need to know what company metric or metrics is that position supposed to help with, or
Yeah.
KPIs, if you will, right? Is this supposed to help with lead conversion rates? Is this supposed to help with, response time and customer service? What metrics are important? And once you know what those metrics are, then it's okay, back off from that and say, what job duties exist or should exist to make that metric better?
Uh-huh.
That job duty list becomes your job description, and then you hire the expert in that field. If you haven't done the first part, and we are guilty of this, like,
Mm-hmm.
we need somebody in billing, so we hire somebody that does billing, but like, we didn't start with, hey, we need claims to
Hmm.
be better so that rejection rates decrease, and the coding is important. So we need someone that has expertise in claims and coding, and they're going to be doing this as their job duties. Now let's go find somebody,
Mm-hmm.
right? That would have saved us a lot of headache,
Mm.
and our team a lot of headache, because people would come
Yeah.
into jobs that weren't well defined, that didn't have KPIs, that didn't have good structure, and they might have been the best person for the job, but neither one of them knew who the job was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's been a really big learning curve that we've learned in the last year and a half or so. And anybody that's looking to hire, that would be my number one advice. Start at the top, break it down to the duties, and then find the expert, someone who's done it before, that can teach you and your leadership team about it.
I love that, man. That's so digestibly broken down. I hear different things. People will give to that question or other questions like hiring. You'll hear that the idea of like being bought into the company, skin in the game, they've been with you from the beginning, that weighs the most, and you can teach them anything. And I've heard other people from their experience say, no, you got to go find people with specific expertise who know exactly the role. They don't need to have been with you. It weighs more that the person has specific expertise, not that they just have like the character and the potential and you can teach them the role. And those are pretty ambiguous things. What you just did is break it down really well. It's like, well, if you start with what you're needing from that role, then you can look at your existing team and say, hey, these people that have been with us from the very beginning and they're bought in, okay, yes, they can learn anything. They're capable people, but can they achieve this objective, like this specific KPI? And if so, we can look that route. But if not, let's go find somebody with that skill set.
Or can we realistically afford to train them?
Yeah, right,
Right. So let's
right.
say, in our example, right, it's claims, right? Getting paid, right? Well, I might have somebody on my team that's very capable of being trained to learn that, and it might take 3 to 6 months. Can I afford 3 to 6 months of revenue being screwed? Right? Maybe not, right? Whereas if it's in operations and it's some HR related things and someone's not an HR expert, but they bought in, they're trustworthy and whatever, okay, they can learn some HR stuff. That's not gonna kill us tomorrow, right? Hopefully, right? So I think you're right. Like, there's this balance of that, and it comes down, I think, to the job. Like, I'm using billing as an example. It's a very niche expertise, and there's so much nuance to it that the training of that and the impact is very significant versus somebody who on my team, when we're building software, they're not a developer, they're not a coder, they're not a tech person, but they've been with us forever. They're trustworthy, they're reliable, they're accountable. They check every box there. She's just learned how to set up software
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and set the triggers and the rules up in the CRM and make sure that
Nice.
the emails are forwarding the right places. Like, she never did that before,
Mm-hmm.
and she's doing fantastic at it right now
That's great.
because she has the brain to do it, and that's something
Mm-hmm.
that we can afford for her to learn.
Yep, totally. Man, like billing coding expertise, that sounds like such a nightmare to me. Oh my gosh. Like having expertise in like the coding of the billing to make sure, whew, but man, that would be important. It'd be
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yes, that it is.
Yeah, for sure. Can you identify a point of failure in your business as you've been growing it, even in these first early years, something that still stings to you that you can remember back from making a mistake?
I think personally, one of the things that my partner and I never did until recently was iron out our roles.
Hmm.
And it's not a singular failure, but it has led to difficulties, challenges, and failures
Do you
because of it.
mean that you could mean both these things? Sorry to interrupt, but are you meaning like to get you don't know what I do versus what he does, or are you saying to the company like the company didn't even or it wasn't able to differentiate and see what you guys did in the difference between the two?
Both, but more the second one.
Okay,
Him and I have done a really good job interacting and communicating and
okay, and kind
delegating.
of naturally fell into like you doing
Yeah,
these things, I'm
yeah.
doing these
That's
things.
great.
Yeah,
But the rest of the organization, like, I think would have benefited from an earlier understanding of what me and my partner's roles are, to avoid confusion, to keep things simple, to not have competing conversations. So I think that, and I've talked to other entrepreneurs about partnerships, like carving that out. Like if I do this all over again, like day one would have been like, here's me, here's you. I won't touch that.
right,
You won't touch
right.
it. Everybody else will know this and we will crush it.
hmm
Right.
hmm
Um, so that I think has led to, so it was a failure, I think, of leadership. And I think that was ignorance, right? We didn't know until we knew it.
Yep.
But I think that's been something that has sort of had an effect overall. I think part of that led to what I would say is our biggest failing forward moment, which was our tech stack development
Hmm.
and choosing the wrong software, not listening to the people in the right way, which affected the software and delayed us significantly. Um, Obviously didn't sync us. So my failing forward. But I think that's been our biggest challenge so far has been
Makes total sense. Yeah, and I'm just out of curiosity because as a listener listening to this episode, I would want to hear this of like what are some things you're putting in place that to make sure that the tech stack putting that together the second time around goes better. Like what are your learnings there? How are you doing that differently?
so one of the things I did just within the last month is I brought somebody boots on the ground up into some of these demos and meetings.
Okay.
That,
Nice.
okay, on a high level, this technology checks the box,
Yeah.
right? If you're
Right.
touching this every single day,
Right.
is it making your
Right.
job better or
That's so
worse?
important.
I don't know that answer,
hmm
right? And so going all the way to the person that's doing and engaging in that job every single day, I'm including them in the exploration of the technology to make sure that it's achieving, okay, this is going to get us the metrics we need. This is going to do this. This is going to do this. The sales guy says it's going to increase your, response time by 20%. Sounds great. Okay. You're doing this every day. Does this actually make sense to you? Right. I think that's one thing. The second thing is a lot of my job recently has been working with different vendors and vetting vendors. And earlier on, when we were more naive, I think we just said yes a lot. Now it's pushing and vetting and pushing and vetting and pushing. So show me the demo, make a demo for me.
hmm
And
hmm
get what you ask for. So now it's, I'm in, and before it'd be like a sales call. It seems like it works, sign a
Yeah.
contract.
Right.
Now I'm
Okay.
6 weeks in and I'm in 7 demos in and I'm like, I still need to see more, right? I need to
Totally. Yeah.
understand it. And that comes from me also understanding and talking to my team that's doing whatever job the software is supposed to do to make sure I understand it better. So I think having a better understanding of the day to day helps inform those decisions and make sure they're in line with the vision.
Yeah, totally, man. I hear so often, and this makes so much sense to me, that people say, like, man, if I could have done it over again, I would have gone straight to my customer and asked, what do you want me to build? Is it like before I go and build something and spend all this time and energy and potentially money, and then I come out with this thing and I'm like, look at my widget. And everybody's like, that doesn't solve our problem. Like, that's not, and that's a version of what you're saying is like, you would go to your staff and say, hey, guys, check it out. We put this whole tech stack in place. Like, we built this. And they're like, this is not how we use this day to day. This is inefficient or doesn't jive with. Yeah. So that makes sense that
In a
would be
way,
important.
that's again, it's sort of like your employees are also your
Yeah.
customers
Yeah.
in a
In a
way.
way.
Like,
Yep. You're
they've
serving
chosen
them.
your product to work for your
Hmm.
company, right? You're there to not just help your external customers, but also, like, make their jobs better
Hmm.
or less, because if their jobs are easier, more efficient, better, and more enjoyable, most of the time, I won't go crazy and say all the time, like, your product, your service, like, it's going to be more efficient and delivered better.
Right.
And so that's what we've been working to achieve.
Totally. I love it. Let's move into just a couple closing questions here. One would be, when you find yourself speaking with other entrepreneurs, what do you find that is a question you get asked really often, the question you get asked the most? And then what's a question that you find them not asking, but you think they need to be?
I read this question I had in advance, and one of the interesting things is that when I meet entrepreneurs that are in a similar space as me in terms of not industry, but like size and like growth environment and whatnot, what I find interesting is we all have the same questions.
Mm.
Nobody truly knows what they're doing.
No, no, dude.
And there's
No.
a heck of a catharsis to that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you're not alone and we're all trying to figure this out. Now, I might have a specific answer to one of his questions or one of her questions, and she might be able to answer one of my specific questions that she didn't have an answer to. But I think that's been the theme as I've spent more time around entrepreneurs is we're all learning from each other. None of us is asking the same question. I think, well, I guess there is a common question. How do I work on my business, not in my business? I think that's a big one. That's a huge one. I think a buddy of mine, in Stavros is working on a company now. Like, how do you get how do you find your free time back? Like, how do you free yourself up, but still be an entrepreneur? I think we all are guilty of overworking, but then also on the other side of our mouth saying we should be working less. And then the other side of the coin, well, you're the boss, right? Why aren't you not working less then? So I think that cliche term work-life balance is a big one as well.
Yeah, no, that's so good. We are all just figuring it out. And it's so funny when you're in a group of people you don't know well and you all have the guard up of like, yes, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I have all the questions of my business figured out. And it just doesn't take long, especially if you're with a good and genuine group of people, for you just to realize like, no, dude, we are all just especially for young entrepreneurs and people new in their business, I should say, everything is the first time you're doing it. And you just have, that's why organizations like, I know we're both a part of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. That's why groups like that, EO or any other group, is so helpful because you can look and you be like, guys, this is the first time I'm doing this. So when you encountered this, because there's so many, you made the point, but there's so many common things throughout. Like we're all just figuring it out. And in fact, there are a lot of companies that have gone through exactly what you have, and people, if they're willing to help, can really walk you through that.
Yeah, I think my biggest learning curve as an entrepreneur has nothing to do with the actual business. It is don't be too proud to not know what you're talking about.
Yeah, totally.
And when we started the app company, that happened to me. I didn't want people to think I was smart and didn't know what I was doing. So when we were looking at funding, I had no idea how to do it. And I finally called a college buddy who was in the VC world.
Okay.
He was like, oh, and he for an hour. And I was like, I get it. And then I
Yeah,
went out and
right.
made $400,000.
Uh,
Right. So like I have taken that moment in time, it was like 2020, I think it was also 2020, and said, we got tech stack issues now. Like, I got a friend in EO who introduced me to a tech guy, and like he's just kind of on speed dial now. I'm like, dude, I got this tech stack issue. I just need to talk it out. I don't know what the heck I'm talking about here. Or hey, like this billing and coding thing, I don't get it. I'm not going to pretend to get it. Let me ask somebody that gets it. And so, accountant, right? CFO, like asking the people that have the knowledge, even if it's not entrepreneur related, but it's content related to your business, right? What are the key metrics we should be measuring, right? That could sound like an idiotic question to ask if you're running a business. But if you're afraid to ask it, you might be measuring the wrong metrics,
Totally, man.
right?
Totally.
And so asking
Totally.
different people and not taking what they say as gold and polling the audience, if you will, and saying,
Yep.
no, that doesn't make sense. Oh, wow, that does. And I think when I say this to people that call me now, because I've always said, especially with grad students, like that are looking to get into psychology and whatnot, like I didn't have a lot of help figuring that out early on. And so when I get a cold email from someone, I'm like, let me pick up the phone. Like this person
Mm.
was brave enough to cold reach out. So I'll
Hmm.
talk to them. And my advice to them is always like when you talk to people, in that case, when it's more of like networking and understanding,
Mhm.
or when you're looking for information about your business and to understand a concept, like if you walk into that conversation expecting to have 100% of your problem solved, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And so my view is any of those conversations, I look for the 5% of new knowledge
Sure.
or knowledge that has been modified to be helpful. And then that is a very successful conversation.
I love that 5% of the helpful of the knowledge. Yeah, I think that's really good. Um, Imagine you answered this a little bit earlier. You said like day one you would do this, but oblige me and think of some other things of like if you could wake up at the beginning of your career, retain all the knowledge and experience that you have now, but you're back at the beginning. What do you do for that first week of your fresh start? How do you get started?
Do I have money or no money?
That's a really good question. No money. You're at the beginning.
Okay. I was going to say, because if I had money, I would hire a CTO, a director of ops, a director of marketing,
You would hire all the
and
right people
a
and put them in the
CFO.
right places.
I
No,
would
that
put, I would
that makes
hire,
sense. Say no money because that's the question is for new founders who are just like I don't even know where to start. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll answer this as like a therapist, because I think this applies immensely into entrepreneurship. In psychology, we all know everybody experiences anxiety, right? And one of the best treatments for anxiety is exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is quite simply do the thing you're scared of enough times you're not scared of it. A little more complex than that. But basically, the more you do something uncomfortable, right, the more your brain feels comfortable. And then you can extend a bit farther, right? But the opposite is more dangerous. If you don't do something uncomfortable, if you come up to a discomfort and stop and turn around, your brain begins to interpret that as danger. So it was discomfort, but then it gets turned into danger. So now you actually go farther away. The next time, instead of getting 5 inches from that scary object, you get 5 feet from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the next time your brain goes, well, last time we were there, it was really dangerous. Now we're 15 feet away.
Interesting.
So you have a double negative if you don't confront that discomfort. Not only are you not doing it, but you're moving farther away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say in a traditional exposure therapy world, there's two ways to do it: flooding or graduated, right? Flooding would be, I'm going to go raise $1 million right now. Don't even have a product. Screw it. Let's just jump in the deep end, right?
Yeah.
More graduated exposure would be put an ad out on Instagram for $20.
Mm-hmm.
See what it feels like. Don't even have a product, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Make a couple phone calls to people to learn about how to raise money, right? Take some of these smaller steps that push your comfort zone toward entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Let's begin to accumulate momentum forward. And then there'll be some tipping point where you'll say, okay, now I have a product. Now I have a service, but I've got some momentum. I've realized that I can break through the discomfort. It's not dangerous. I'm not going to die. I'm going to be okay. I can tolerate that feeling. And so I think that is, for most people, I think that if you would ask them about their entrepreneur journey through that lens, they'd say that's what they did. Now, there are others that just said, you know, I'm just going to dive in because I think this is an awesome idea and I'm full bought in and it's all action, all confidence, go. That exists too. But I would imagine if you like had buckets, more would probably be the graduated exposure to entrepreneurship bucket.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that's a really unique way to answer that question. I think that's really great. Lastly, what's a tool, quote, or book, something that you found indispensable to you personally or professionally in your life?
So there's it's in the self-help category. It's a book called The Confidence Gap. I used to assign it to most of my clients, and with this disclaimer: the first third of it or more, most people reading go, "I'm not that anxious," because it is in the
Right.
self-help category. But the quote from that book that stands out to me is, "Actions first, then confidence follows."
Hmm.
So if you wait to feel 100% confident to take an action, you're not going to act. If you act first, then you will begin to feel confident.
Yeah.
And so that book is, again, more therapy heavy, more self-helpy. It's not an entrepreneurial book. But if you are an entrepreneur or trying to be one and you find yourself with this like paralyzing fear or anxiety that I can't do it, which we've all experienced at different times, it could be a helpful book if you recognize maybe you're not that anxious, but the content in it and the exercises and the skills in it are something that really, really are helpful. And it's all based on this idea that like if we wait to feel something to do something, we won't do that thing.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that's really, really good. I love how, I mean, obviously, but like so much of what you brought in, the perspective you brought was through your therapeutic lens. And like so much of what you answered was tinged with that perspective. And I think that's really, really awesome because I don't get that perspective on this show much. So that was great. Thanks so much, Doug. This was really, really, really great. I mean, just share that. I think it was unique perspective and I appreciate you taking the time to share it today.
Hey, man, I enjoyed it. I'm really stoked to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. You bet. All right. You take care. If you guys enjoyed the show, leaving a review is the best way to help others find it, second only to sharing it directly with your friends and family. Thanks so much for helping get the word out. Hit me up at brandon@readysetstartuppod.com if you have additional questions about a topic I covered, have suggestions about another area you'd like to see me dig into, or just want to say hi. Please reach out. I'd love to get in touch. Keep imagining, keep creating, keep inspiring your spheres of influence with what you're passionate about. The world may just need that dream that's in your head. See you next time.